Hello and welcome back to the Holistically Awakened podcast. I'm your host, Laurence Inez, and today I have a special episode that's really close to my heart because the interview I'm sharing today is with Jessica Young, and we do really have a similar approach to looking at PCOS, but also illness and disease in general. And so this really takes a traditional Chinese medicine approach, but also a holistic approach. So I'm just so excited to share this with you guys because I know this is going to really help so many people, especially shift their perspective and look at things a different way, and also discover that there are so many ways to addressing PCOS, hormonal imbalances, or really any health condition. And so Jessica Young is a Chinese medicine practitioner. She's a licensed acupuncturist. She's a Reiki practitioner, holistic pelvic care provider. She's a yoga teacher. She's a holistic reproductive and sexual health educator. And in her heart, she is an embodiment priestess dedicated to reconnecting women to their body wisdom, emotional truth, and inner knowing. She knows this journey inside and out because she's truly walked it, both personally and professionally, with over 100 clients. And so I can't wait for you to tune into the interview. I am so excited. I hope that you can share your thoughts with me. Please, send me an email, or rating and review is always appreciated. I love hearing from you guys, and let's dive in. So welcome, Jessica, to the podcast today. I am beyond excited for this podcast episode. I think we've been prepping it for a little while now, and it's just everything I'm so obsessed with talking about right now. And I think that a lot of people are not even aware of. So I am so excited to get your perspective on PCOS and, traditional Chinese medicine and all of that. So thank you for coming on, and I'm so happy to have you.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. And yes, this information changed my life. And that is why when you asked me to do this, I was like, hell yes, girl, because this information is what just deeply shifts our relationship to ourselves and our being. And we can step out of PCOS as even being a disease and just kind of step into a new way of being with it. So talking about this with you is just so deeply exciting for me too. So thank you.
So before we dive into it, I'd love to get a little bit of a backstory about how you got to where you are now, and really where your story really started.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's see. It's always so funny with these. It's like, how far back do you go? But, I grew up in Akron, Ohio. I lived a pretty, normal, stressful life. And, you know, really by the time I got to college, I was really uncomfortable with a lot of different things in my reality. I feel like my hormones are wacky. I've been on hormonal birth control already by this point for like 2 years because I started when I was 16. I had no idea what I wanted to do or any purpose. And the only thing that I knew how to do or wanted to do at the time was yoga, and started getting into that. And that was really my gateway into the entire portal of what is energetics and what is, holistic health and all these different ways of being, because my parents are both chemists. I'm from a completely like Western science-based household. This is not what my parents planned I was going to be doing, and certainly not what I thought I was going to be doing. But what ended up happening, to make my whole life story short, is I ended up moving out to Portland, Oregon, and studying classical Chinese medicine at National University of Natural Medicine. And when I was there, my whole life totally changed, because all of a sudden I was still in school, but I was in school in a way that didn't, um, it was school that was focused on living cyclically and how to live in alignment with the seasons and how to work with our energies. And I was learning things that I had no idea I would ever want to get into. And the reason I was there is because I had some really favorable experiences with acupuncture, and I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew I loved acupuncture because it helped me heal my shoulder and cry over an old breakup. And I was like, okay, like, let's do this for a job because I feel like I need to go to grad school for something. Turns out it was the best choice I ever made. And it was kind of the universe lining up in my favor to give me exactly what I need. And while I was at school, I kind of really came face to face with my own health. And I think my program was a 5-year graduate program, and it was in the between the second and third year that I realized that something was really off. I'd gotten more and more in tune with my health continually. That was also around the time where I finally got my copper IUD out. So was getting completely off of birth control and was just realizing that my cycles were wonky and my hormones were whack. My moods were all over the place. My blood sugar was crazy. I had crazy acne and all of these things. And I didn't even know what PCOS was. I was super lucky to be in the environment that I was in with friends and actually my partner. We met at school, and he was the first person who suggested that I might have PCOS after we learned about it at class. And I was like, no, I can't have that. So much resistance. I think I even yelled at him about it one day. And then through all of this, being in the right environment, learning these amazing healing modalities, not just through Chinese medicine, but holistic pelvic care. I studied with Sarah Bly, and I'm training with her to be a fertility awareness educator and holistic reproductive and sexual health educator. All these different pieces, and also including shamanic and energetic work and plant ceremony, all of these different pieces to understand really what PCOS is and to completely shift and transform my life to getting to a place where I am now, which is 2 years into owning my own practice. And I have a clinical practice with my partner, and actually like being like, oh my God, my PCOS is healed. My blood work says I'm healed. Like I don't have a disbalance anymore. My moods and my emotions, I'm like, wow, I never knew that life could be like this. I don't remember ever being like this. So all of these pieces are what has really, my story is why I do the work that I do and why I'm so passionate about it. So thank you so much for giving me a little glimpse to sum that all up. Um, yeah, it's just been an honor, and it's an honor to share it as well.
Wow, I love it. And I just feel like there's so many routes to take. But one thing that really stuck out to me was your reaction to PCOS because I had a similar one. I kind of had a feeling that it might be it, and like some doctors were hinting at it, but no one ever really took it seriously because I'm like the classic lean, like you lean PCOS. You look healthy, like nothing is like, red flag or anything, except I looked terrible. I felt terrible. My cycle was non-existent, all of these sorts of things. But I was in denial. I didn't want to have that stamp on me because the negative connotation that PCOS has out there, especially in the, conventional world, quote unquote, is quite scary. Like it is quite scary to get a diagnosis, and this is what I hear from a lot of women, and this is how I experienced it too. And it's from my experience, it was just like, well, you're gonna have trouble having kids, and it was just kind of like all of these things you can't do when you can't have. And so it didn't really make sense for me to be like, yeah, I do want a PCOS diagnosis because yeah, I don't know. Anyway, so that was my experience. And so that does sound like it was kind of the same for you. Like, oh, I don't want to have this thing like, hanging over me. And that's why I'm just so passionate about sharing this alternative reality or approach to PCOS because it doesn't have to be this way. And I'm so excited for you to share kind of like, what does PCOS really mean to you? And in terms of your research and your approach with Chinese medicine, what really is PCOS? Let's start
Yeah,
there.
that's an awesome question. And yeah, it's huge. And it's taken me years and years of synthesizing my own experience, synthesizing, friends and family members, because there is also like a proclivity towards PCOS in my family, and kind of understanding, and taking that even a step back from genetics. It's like, what is lineage and what is ancestry, and where are these like, different, all these different pieces that all inform what PCOS could be. And I mean, there's there's so many different lenses that we could look at this through, but my major conclusion is that PCOS is simply our bodies giving us a huge message that modern life is not working for us, and it is not a way that we should actually live our lives. uh, that for me was the once I got to that point, I was just like, yes, because it's a modern induced disease. Like, I don't know a better way to say that, but the way that we live is what creates this, unfortunately. And it has to do, like, even in Chinese medicine, for example, I would say that the two like major things that we see are what we call kidney deficiency and spleen deficiency. But if we take those words away, kidney deficiency is more like our deep vitality and our reproductive resources, and spleen deficiency is our overall digestive capacity. And both of those two things are what is so inherently screwed up by our modern way of living, which is so linear, so production focused, and honestly just so draining and stressful. So that's the major way that I've been holding it, and understanding that there's different phenotypes and different expressions because we're all inherently different. And what I've been reading in, even Western medical research, which is concerning, is that the incidence and prevalence of PCOS is continuing to grow. And I don't think it's just because the awareness of it is growing. I think more and more different bodies are responding to the society we live in. And that's why I was so excited when you asked to do this, because I'm just like, yes, we need to talk about it.
Yeah, 100%. I love this answer. And I really want to dive deeper into it because you were mentioning kidney deficiency and spleen deficiency. So I think that's definitely not something that our doctor will say to us if we, go get a PCOS diagnosis, or we ask, like, what can we do? Many of us have never heard of this before. So what does that even mean? Like, how do we even like approach that?
So, I mean, the way that I approach it as a Chinese medicine practitioner is simply noticing how are the resources in your body being used up, and perhaps used up too quickly by your life. So it's like I said, throw the word spleen and kidney deficiency kind of out the door. They're just another way of framing that our vitality and our resources are being kind of expended by the way that we live. We don't rest with the seasons, we don't rest with our menstrual cycles. And I never even understood that that was a thing, that we should rest in winter and that we should rest and kind of recharge our batteries. Even at night, our sleep is disrupted. We have artificial lighting. We have phones that are beeping all the time. We have all of these different things that pull us out of this deep, restful state. And in the Chinese medicine lens, that is what deeply replenishes the kidneys. The kidneys are what power everything in the entire body, including our digestion, which is what I referred to as the spleen before. But and then also there's the food that we're intaking and all of these different things around food, and um, just not high nutrient dense food. And it's like, okay, then that inherently weakens the spleen, and inherently then there's less vital energy coming into the body. So then our kidneys are inherently more deficient too, because the spleen's what feeds the kidneys, and the kidneys are what kind of feeds the spleen. I mean, in Chinese medicine, everything is completely interrelated. So it's kind of trying to describe super complex cycles, but I hope that that at least gives a little bit more insight around that.
Yeah, I love it. And I love that you said that, like, just throw it out the window, because same thing as this is how I also kind of approach PCOS now. It's like, it doesn't really, in my opinion, matter that much about the diagnosis, because that's literally just like how we defined basically a symptoms that come up. So really PCOS is can look like so many different phenotypes and different symptoms. And we've really literally just defined it as PCOS. But at the end of the day, as you mentioned, it's really just we are living out of alignment, we are out of balance, and every single person will need to look at themselves specifically in terms of how to heal their bodies. Because I think a lot of the time we're looking at, okay, it's PCOS, we got to take this supplement, we got to take this herb, we got to eat this food. But that's not the reality. It's actually, you just have to get to know yourself and understand what works for you, where are you out of balance. And yeah, obviously our 21st century lifestyle is just completely backwards to what we need. So I love that you mentioned that, because it's really getting to the specifics, right?
Yes. And I absolutely love the way that you summarize that. I think it's this beautiful process. Like, PCOS is the most beautiful invitation to come into yourself and to come into alignment with your being. And I decided to actually, for a little bit there, my marketing and my business was focused and I was using the words PCOS. And I actually decided to pull back from that a little bit, because I, PCOS is just a name that, and there are so many women who are undiagnosed with PCOS. And I don't know, it was just like this needing to pull back away from defining ourselves as a disease and a category of symptoms, and just being like, it's a societal and individual call to come continually more and more into alignment. And um, I just love how you were really emphasizing like the individual process. And I would say that that individual process even continues to extend into like, what are our emotions and how do our emotions impact our body? And, um, you know, this whole like, you know, deeply cultivating the feminine, and what does that mean for each of us? And what does it mean to actually, instead of just cultivating the feminine, what does it mean to cultivate a balanced life, like balance between, you know, in so many different levels, but even balance between feminine and masculine. And so these are all these pieces that are just, continually like I'm swimming with them because it's just continually synthesizing it and understanding it in more deep layers.
I just love everything you said, and I feel like we just totally relate on the same level, and we really understand now PCOS on the same level. So I just love it. And what did I want to say? Before we get into the energetics and like masculine, feminine, which I'm so excited to dive into, there was one thing that I wanted to bring up in terms of damp accumulation. And this, when I learned about dampness, my mind was blown because all of these symptoms that I was having were just like, I just felt so seen. And I was like, oh my God, this makes so much sense. And from what I've learned, it really seems like it's one of the key imbalances that's going on for most people because, for instance, diet, like the standard American diet, is like so damp, like there's so much damp foods. And if we have too much of this, then this can cause imbalances, right? So I'd love to hear a little bit about your take on dampness, what that means, and what it really means for PCOS.
Yes, and I love that you asked that because I actually wrote a little note about that, but didn't say it earlier. So I'm just like, yes, number
Go
this
ahead.
is the number one thing that happens in spleen deficiency, which we were already talking about, is damp accumulation. So dampness is like, we call it a bun and a biao in Chinese, which means it's the root and the branch. So the root is the spleen deficiency. The branch, which means the living manifestation of it, is the dampness. And we call it, actually, it's not just damp, but damp phlegm too. Phlegm is more like a formed version of dampness, which is actually what we say is what can form the cysts and the ovaries in PCOS. So dampness is so many faceted, so many layered. Of course, there's the dampness that we take in dietarily. Like gluten and dairy are straight up damp. Like, ice cream, number one, damp. It's damp and cold. Like when you start kind of tapping in more to the energetics of food too, you're just like, oh, that's damp and that's cold. And cold damages the spleen and damp damages the spleen. So both of those make your overall digestive functioning worse, which then leads to more damp accumulation. And it's a never ending pattern. And there was also a note I actually wrote down too that I wanted to mention, which is the importance of dampness with obesity and being overweight. Because, even, I am a lean phenotype PCOS person. I'm like, that's a weird way to say it. But um, even in any situation, it's like, how does our body process and deal with dampness? And everyone has their own ways of doing it. And so my body does it in certain ways. I get a little bit more puffy, I get a little more inflamed, I get bloated, and I get like, kind of puffy under the eyes, like puffy skin, like all of that is signs of dampness. And just another manifestation of dampness is obesity. And what's so interesting is our culture views like, anything of being, we need to lose weight and you need to work hard to lose weight and all of this stuff all the time. And like, you need, I mean, I was born in 91. So like all I heard when I was a childhood was like, if you're overweight, like in the whole 90s, was like drink water, ice cold water and salads to lose weight. And what I really want, I've been sharing this with a lot of patients lately, and it's been so transformative for their lives, is like, in Chinese medicine, we view anything as being overweight as dampness on top of a deficiency. And so if you're just continuing to starve the body and put cold water in and, eat really like nutrient not dense foods, like really like, iceberg lettuce and all these things, that it's like, this is not how we're actually going to ever get to the deficiency underneath, which is that spleen deficiency and that kidney deficiency. And we need to really like feed the body, like no matter what your phenotype is or your presentation, that's what needs to happen through nutrition. And I know that your work focuses so much around that, and I so respect everything I see coming from you in that way. I'm always just like, yes, yes, yes. And so it's just like this emphasis on nutrient dense foods and emphasis on, getting really good sleep and stress reduction. All of these things are inherently ways that we prevent the accumulation of dampness by keeping our body robust and vital.
Oh, I love it. And it's actually just mind-blowing because I've also been talking more about like warming foods, right? Because just cold, cold, cold all the time, especially now, we need to be eating with the seasons, right? I think that's a big part of
Yes.
dampness, combating dampness. So, for instance, I see this also changed me. I used to have this like chronic cough and all of these other issues where I would have like ice cold smoothies and like, frozen fruit for breakfast. And then I realized when I started to kind of like stop doing that, a lot of my symptoms changed. And this is what I also tell my clients as well. Like in the summertime, it's different, obviously, but now, like, it's probably not the best to be having an ice cold smoothie every single day for breakfast, right?
Ab- Absolutely not. And I counsel my patients and clients with this all the time because it's so contrary to what we receive as normal in our culture. Um, but for example, I basically, from the moment it begins to feel cold outside to all the way almost till summer, I don't drink water that is cold. I actually drink. I have this little teapot, like one of those tea warmer things, and I heat it up to, well, it's 140 degrees Fahrenheit. I'm not sure what that is in Celsius, but it's warm water. It's not hot, but I always drink warm water, and I recommend my patients do the same. That has been the same through, the history of Chinese medicine for thousands of years. Is this focus on warm foods? Um, and it's warm foods are inherently nourishing because and this is a simple way that I learned to explain this, but I think it really strikes home, is if you think about taking anything in that's cooler than your body temperature or way colder, it depends, like, ice cold smoothie, like way colder, you're if you already have a lower digestive capacity, aka spleen deficiency that we were talking about, or stomach deficiency too in Chinese medicine, just adding on layers here. If you're already deficient, your poor body is going to have to heat that food up to your body temperature before it even begins to digest it. And think about how much energy you've just spent on heating it up to be the right temperature to even get the nutrients out of it. And for some people, it's like by the time it gets heated up, there is no way that any nutrients are really going to get processed from it because, well, there's no energy left to extract the nutrients. So, yes, warm foods, especially during, most of the year. What I really recommend as far as seasonal eating is like, yes, enjoy an ice cream here or there in the summertime, but try to limit that too. And there's a whole nother principle in Chinese medicine about, when our yang is out and we're in the summertime, it's like, well, it also leaves your digestive system a little bit more vulnerable to cold. So really cold's not great any time of the year, but you really want to eat in a way that's just deeply nourishing and respects what's in season, what is growing in the lands around you. And so it's like right now I'm eating a lot of squash, a lot of squash soup.
Mm.
I eat meat, so eating a lot of, like, slow cooked meats, warm. um it's really beginning to shift out of this also dietary standard that our food is supposed to be the same year round. And um, yeah, really shifting into seasonal living and eating. I'm so glad you brought that up. So
Me
yes.
too, because I think this is something not a lot of people think about. And I love that you mentioned all of that. And it's really just about balance, right? Like, if we have too much of anything, it's not going to be good. And we really just need to look at, well, what makes sense here? Like, we just need to go back to the roots, honestly. That's really the whole answer to it. But I want to kind of shift gear into energetics because I'm fascinated by all things energy. And I'd love to hear your take on like the energetics behind PCOS and specifically going into feminine versus masculine, because I think that there is no coincidence that PCOS is characterized by, male characteristics, high male sex hormones, the androgens. And I've really noticed in myself and others with PCOS that there is a lack of being in their feminine, and there's just a lot of this masculine power and this go go go, hustle hustle hustle, and not being able to receive and things like that. And I definitely saw this in myself, even from a young age, just not even accepting my feminine and just trying to be. I'm a twin, so I have a twin brother, and I didn't even want to wear a dress, and I was like having, tantrums, and I guess there was also a disconnect even from a young age. And I think that specifically in our society, yes, women have so many more rights, which is great. We can pretty much, have the same jobs and things like that. There's a lot more opportunities. But at the same time, there's almost this emphasis on you have to achieve, you have to achieve, you have to achieve. And this is almost where we put our self worth in as well. So I'd love for you to get into that in terms of the energetics and how the feminine and masculine can be out of balance.
Yes. And I'm just like so grinning over here. I'm just like, yes, 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 because this is the yeah, and like, just to even add on what you said, it's like the PCOS is characterized not only by higher androgens and masculine characteristics, right? But the actual loss of cycling. And that's the piece that really, really strikes home for me. And I mean, at the end of the day, the energetics of PCOS is, well, it's actually that our body is trying to meet our demands. The body is reacting to our demands to live in a linear production oriented society. And so our body is inherently becoming more on that solar, day by day, linear masculine structure to actually meet the situations that we're placing ourselves in. And I really wanted to emphasize that too, because there's so much sometimes a vilification of our bodies. Our bodies are doing this to us. Like, oh, like it really separates our soul from our body. And I'm like, no, our bodies are our friends. They are our sacred container and envelope for this lifetime. And they're actually trying to support us. We're just not showing up for them. And so that's this whole like beautiful, another way of coming into balance and integration. And so just to tap back into the other pieces of what you said is especially about, growing up. I mean, my mom is amazing and she's also lived completely out of her masculine. I deeply respect her and the way that she has supported me and shown up for me in my life. And she has shown me aspects of the feminine in, different ways through music and through yoga. But my mom is a, pretty straight laced college professor, chemist who's worked her butt off in a man's only world to make a name for herself. And in that, it's like I remember the story she told me when I was little, and these are the narratives that I was raised with. Is like she stopped wearing skirts so that the people would begin to respect her in the laboratory. She started swearing and making jokes about other women so that the men wouldn't sexualize her. And all of these things, it's like, so in this striving to become equal that we've seen through the feminist movement, which I deeply respect and have you know, obviously so much deep gratitude for how much women's rights have shifted. But I also think that there's something inherently that we've lost in our culture, which is the right to be a cyclic being and the right to live from your femininity, which is joy, spontaneity, creativity, going with the flow, living on the Earth's calendar and a cyclical calendar instead of weeks and schedules and months and deadlines. And yeah, it's this whole thing about just witnessing that, recognizing it, and deconstructing it within ourselves. That is where I found actually the most healing for my hormones, for my nervous system, for my whole being, is in the pulling out of all the pieces of that. And I guess, this is something that I wrote down, but I just want to say it is like, it's like we cannot expect to have regular cycles and be fertile if we don't live from our cycles and we don't live a cyclic life. If we're just living the linear and living the do, constant exponential growth and production, there we're inherently sacrificing what makes us women, and what makes us feminine is the capability of cycling. And the cycling and the linearity could exist in perfect complementary balance to each other in our society and within ourselves. But that's really the call, the huge call that I've been seeing that is coming from many aspects in our society as more and more people are waking up to this. So it's beautiful.
Oh my God, I love everything you're saying. And so I think that this is also something that is tricky, right? I mean, I'm speaking from my own experience and with many women I've spoken to, I interact with, I've worked with, and I think it definitely comes from like deep rooted beliefs and, past experiences of, like I was mentioning, like where we think our achievement is how is that's where our worth is, or that's how we got love or whatever. So obviously we really want to unravel that. It's usually going to be like some, inner child stuff and all of that. But how do we even start to step into the feminine? Like, are there action things that we can do? Or like literally, is it like do nothing or like take a day off per week? Or what are some certain things that we can do to, step into the feminine and
Yes.
start to balance that out?
Yes. And this is very much where I've shifted my work to focusing on. And this is what has really been the guiding principle of my life for the past few years. The first thing, the most basic thing, is just beginning to track and map out your cycles. You know, that re- the most basic level of that is simply on your calendar or on an app, marking when you're bleeding so that you begin to know when it is that you're bleeding. Even if your cycles are really irregular and you're even experiencing anovulation, then it's okay. It's like, well, then shift to looking at the moon and begin to look at the phases of the moon. It's called lunaception. The new moon, taking the new moon as a time of rest and taking the full moon as the time of your full creative potential, your, being a little bit more outgoing, maybe scheduling some more things. And, it's like, it's a combination of honoring either the moon cycle or your personal cycle, or a combination of the two is where I've really stepped into in my life. But it's like, honor your cycle, honor the flows of energy within you. It's like every single cycle, irregular or not, is an expression of a whole year, all the way around the seasons. And so, how would you live in a way that's really in seasonal alignment through all those seasons is the most basic thing. And so, this really comes back to just track your cycle. And what I actually started doing that's been the most life changing thing lately is I said, screw the calendar and screw living week by week. So, what I did is I got the moon phases, first of all, to sync onto my calendar. So you can actually add it through Google Calendar. And I was like, oh, okay, moon phases on. And then I drew some big circles, which it's like one day I hope to make this into a planner or something. But I was like, what do I want to do this cycle? Not what am I going to do this month? Because that doesn't actually honor what I have like the energy flow for me. It's like, well, what if I'm bleeding in the middle of the month? Like, then I feel like I just didn't get anything done this month. But if we start like, getting, and it's not about getting things done. And like, I really want to, step back from that too, because that's where we find our worth. It's like, how do we manifest our dreams and our visions this month? And then how do we deeply rest and come even more in contact with the essence of our beings through menstruation or through the time of the new moon if you're not menstruating regularly? And then how do you express that again? And that is really like the feminine flow, and the most basic way of really reconnecting to that feminine energy is just reconnecting to the cyclical energy instead of linear.
I love that idea with the syncing the calendar. I need to look into that because I do track. But I love that you just like fuse them all together to just make it so much easier. Definitely gonna look into that. Thank you
Yeah,
for that.
I'm like, we can talk more about it, girl. I'm
Yes.
down.
So moving on, because I know I literally could spend like 2 hours with you, but I want to respect your time. I know you were talking about the meaning of cysts, which I find so fascinating. Could you get into that?
Yeah, it's actually, it kind of flows in perfectly with what we were just talking about too, with the manifestations of our dreams and our visions. And so I'll get back there. And but I really just want to start by saying that I've been playing with this concept for a while. I've heard different, healthcare practitioners and like kind of energetic philosophers, for lack of a better word, like kind of playing around this idea. And I've really been sitting with it. And um, you know, some basic, also taking this back to biomedical fact. I mean, I also have a background in biochemistry. And so I really appreciate understanding the hormones. And that's just another lens into it. And, so basically, PCOS is not only dominated, or well, it's characterized by the higher androgens, but it's more of an LH and FSH, the luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone, um, dominance. Like those hormones are more playing the role, and they're trying to figure out their own rates and their own communication within the body from the pituitary gland to the ovaries. So, and that is that actually, some just saying that, that is what puberty is. And it's interesting because PCOS is almost this not fully shifting into the full estrogen and progesterone cycles that we just talked about, of being a cycling like a fully cycling being. And it's still like kind of in that thing of like, I'm not fully birthing this creation. I'm not birthing my babies. And whether your babies are real children and you're experiencing infertility, or your babies are the the visions and the dreams that you're holding within your soul, that you're like, this is what I'm here to do in this world. Also, every single woman that I've yet met who's still struggling with PCOS, or has been, is someone who has these huge dreams and visions that haven't actually been able to be manifested yet. And so in some ways it's still like, it's like our energies are still in puberty, for lack of a better way of saying that. And that I just came up with that right now, but it's like, and it's like we're just not fully stepping into that creative manifesting potential, which is the power of the feminine, is to manifest and create life. And um, I know that that was my personal experience, like so much so. And actually becoming an entrepreneur and beginning to create these, like birth my visions and allow it to be renewed every month. And it's like I feel like I'm like, wow, I'm like, I started becoming an entrepreneur when I was 28. I'm like, wow, I'm 28 and I finally came out of puberty within myself, because I got to begin to express the essence of my being and manifest it. And I think that that was also just a huge part of my own healing. And I've seen that in so many patients and clients as well. So it's like, yeah, that's what the cysts are. They're these balls of our dreams that, like, they haven't been birthed yet. And so how do we begin to do that too, as part of this really holistic, creative process of healing?
This is something that's just so relevant, especially since I've been noticing this in clients as well, in terms of, yeah, not, bringing to life what we really want to bring. But I think it's also not even admitting what we want, because a lot of the time we see like, oh, I don't know what I want to do. I don't know what my purpose is, whatever. But a lot of the time it's just hidden behind the fear, through different types of fears. But
Yes.
and we're not even letting ourselves admit it, and we think that we don't know what we want, but really we all do on a core level.
Yes.
And one thing that also came up for me there was like, another sort of, I guess, energetics in terms of like metaphor was the throat chakra. So the chakras I'm so fascinated by, and this is something that I've been working on in terms of like the throat chakra, because I was having issues with thyroid and cough and stuff like that. And I was like, okay, I got to check out the throat chakra because something's out of balance here. And I think it's also just saying it out loud, voicing it, admitting it, just even voicing your truth, whether it's being like something that you want to manifest, something that you have a desire, a goal, or even just like actually being able to say no to somebody or say yes. These sorts of things are just so difficult now for women to do, because we feel like we're going to be judged, or we're going to hurt somebody, or all of this people pleasing stuff. And I think that is just something that just came up for me, and something that is just so relevant for women, especially nowadays.
Yes. And there's another whole piece of that too. Like, well, I'm like, gosh, there's so many places we could go from that. But to keep it succinct, it's like, okay, well, first of all, the pelvic bowl and the throat are a mirror for each other, right? Structurally and energetically. Also, it's like, so that's like a connection between the second chakra and the fifth chakra, if you want to put it that way. But it's also, sometimes the things that we don't say, we swallow and we store inside of ourselves. And I had actually one of my first yoga teachers who was the first person to teach me about chakras is, the stuff that we don't say in our fifth chakra is actually like, not only depletes that area, but then we swallow it and then it depletes our gut. And then part of what, like, in our digestion and our spleen chi. And then from there, it's like, then that damp phlegm that's created there, that's what, like, then those dreams and things go even lower. And maybe that's like, that's what's being stored in the ovaries too. It's like, you could view it that way. And it's just, yeah, like the whole journey with the chakras. And I also loved what we were talking about, bringing up about the fear. And fear is like this energy of constraint. All emotions have an energy, and fear is like the deep, dark, cold waters of like you're paralyzed in fear. And it's so interesting too, because, in Chinese medicine, we talk about all of the organs are associated with an emotion, and the kidneys, the main emotion is fear. So getting back to that kidney deficiency, and like I said, just to recap, kidneys are that reproductive vitality. So our fear is also inherently draining our, like, the potency of our uterus and our ovaries. But then and it's like, the chicken or the egg, like what came first? But it doesn't matter, because it's all just the expression of the same things, and it's so nuanced. And I love how much you've been bringing in all the different layers of nuance into this, and this is just such a rich conversation. And it's like, yes, I just want to keep going all day, but I know we can't.
I know. Well, we're gonna have to schedule another one. I
Okay.
just love, do you have time to talk about this technique to tune into yourself? How long
Yes.
does that take? Is that something fairly quick?
Yes, it's super short, and it's the first thing that I use with all of my clients and all of my patients, as the number one way to just begin to reconnect to yourself. So it's really, really simple. And all it requires is closing your eyes for a moment, taking one hand and placing it over your womb, and taking your other hand and placing it over your heart. So this access between the heart and the reproductive organs, or the heart and the kidneys, in Chinese medicine, we view this axis is our central pole, the core of our being. And it's really where our spirit resides. We say that, the heart is like the empress who kind of resides on her throne undisturbed. And so it's just this connection between the heart and the kidneys. So it's one thing to intellectually know that. So when we have our hands here, the next step is to actually feel it. So the visualization and the practice that I guide all of my clients and patients with is just to simply take a deep breath into both the heart and the kidneys, the heart and the womb space, and just feel what it feels like to have your attention focused in both those areas. Perhaps begin to envision or feel some warmth under your hands. Maybe it begins to glow with a little bit of light, perhaps golden or white light. And then once you're tapped into those centers, your womb and your heart, on your inhale, just envision and see if this rings true for you, is that you can inhale from the womb up to the heart. And then you exhale from the heart back down to your womb. Inhale from the womb up to the heart. And exhale from the heart down to the womb. And that's it. It's a super simple practice that just engages a reconnection energetically in our body, the deepest feminine core of our being. And this connection is where it's like, okay, we're hearing our wombs with our hearts, and then we're letting our womb hear the vision of our heart. And so it's this co-creative thing where we can just step more in balance with ourselves and just begin to listen and invoke that energetic connection. And so it's super simple. And to make it really practical, my recommendation with it is, you know, where are you going to be at least every day, twice a day? And the first thing that came to me was, I'm going to be sitting on the edge of my bed, either getting up or going to sleep. So the way that I often encourage people to incorporate this practice in is sitting on the edge of your bed, either when you're waking up in the morning. First thing, you put your feet down, and you take just 3 breaths this way. It can take like 15 seconds. It's not a big deal. And as well, and in the evening, you're getting ready. I always do my gua sha and get ready for bed, my whole bedtime prep. I sit on the edge of my bed, 3 breaths, then you can lay down. And it's just that it's mostly just setting that intention and that that is what will deeply reconnect yourself within yourself, which sounds silly, but it's true. It's just that that inquiry, that curiosity, and the time and setting the time and space. And I think that all of us will be so surprised and awed in what actually can come up just from such a simple practice. So I hope that everyone finds that useful, and I hope that you just try it out at least once.
Well, I loved it because I did it while you were saying it.
Awesome.
And I think I'm definitely going to do that for my routines now. So thank you so much for sharing. And I'm sure that so many people are going to benefit from this. Honestly, this is one of my favorite episodes. So thank you so much for coming on. I will have to get you back on for sure. And I'd love for you to end off just with letting us know, how do we find you? What are you up to? If we want to connect with you, if you want to work with you, let us know the details.
Yeah, absolutely. And first, I'll just say thank you so much. This has been so much fun. This is my first podcast ever. And, this was just an amazing experience to be able to share this. And it's just like, it feels so good when I'm like, my heart becomes so alive doing this work. And my whole spirit is just like, yes. Like, so thank you for creating this opportunity for me today. And thank you to everyone who's listening. If you are interested in connecting with me more, you can follow me on Instagram. My Instagram is cycle.cultivatress. And I know Lawrence will have that linked somewhere probably. And my website is www.jessicayoungs.com. Those are for my virtual practice. I do have an in person practice, and that's up here in Sandpoint, Idaho. And it's called Embodied Virtue, and our website's embodiedvirtue.com. If you are local in the area, I'd love to see you and meet you in person. Other than that, I am currently taking, I only have a few more spots left, but for my 3-month one-to-one holistic feminine coaching and mentorship. And it's just this amazing program that I've been synthesizing for the past at least 3 years, and just kind of have really given it life and vision. And I'm just so excited about it. And yeah, so you can always just send me a DM on Instagram or send me an email, and I would love to work with you and love to talk to you. And I will be coming out soon this year too with some more education around fertility awareness. I'm finishing up my internship and how I incorporate that in, as well as, fertility awareness is a huge practice that I incorporated with PCOS, and it's like that's a whole nother topic. But I'm going to be coming out with some more education and training around that, as well as hopefully an online course or two within the next year. So super excited, and thank you for letting me share all that, Lauren. And thank you again for this amazing experience. And yes, we are going to have to do this again.
How exciting. So many things coming up for you. And honestly, when I found your profile, I've never resonated with someone like so profoundly, because obviously our approach is very similar, and I don't really see this approach a lot, just out there in general. And I just like resonated so much, and I just loved how you just showed up. So I'm so happy that you came on, and I can't believe it's your first podcast, because it definitely didn't sound like it. So you're definitely a natural, and I can't wait to get you back on. So thank you so much.
Yes, thank you so much, Lauren. Have a great day.